well, it's becoming clearer and clearer that we do not understand the implications of what we're doing with these technologies. I mean, McLuhan always said this. It was, he said no technology in human history has ever been put in place with even a partial appreciation of its consequences. The unappreciated consequences of what we're doing is that we're actually building some kind of a superorganism. And we do not know where we fit into things if this Promethean force that we're playing with should actually come to life, because it's a globally distributed intelligence. I mean, we can have paranoid fantasies about it, but I think after a few minutes of thinking about it, you realize you really don't know what to think about it. The fantasy that it would herd us all into dumpsters seems unlikely. It's actually like an impossible intellectual problem, because the question you're asking yourself is, what would a superintelligence be like? And the reason that's hard to answer is because you ain't one. And so you're like looking up into the light and saying, is it God or demon? Is it salvation or extinction? And the answer is, if you knew that, you would be it. And yet, what it took us to achieve in 100,000 years of evolution, this thing could probably achieve in a long morning on the net. And so it will be like a cascade, a chain reaction, from the child's first cry to the complete coordination of world electrical grids and air traffic control systems and everything else could be a matter of hours. Hans Moravec, the guy who runs the Carnegie Mellon Institute for Machine Intelligence, says we may not know what hit us, that, we're essentially incubating an alien intelligence on the internet, and the things we want from the net bring this thing ever closer. Like, one of the things we're building into the net is the ability to pull as much processor power to any given problem as that problem requires. Well, for an AI, for an artificial intelligence, that would mean it could just immediately basically appropriate as much processor power as it needed to do what it was doing. For the past 10 years, while we've been cheerfully waging the 90s in our various ways, an enormous change has taken place in the machine environment, which we're not even aware of or have the dimmest understanding of, which is all the machines, all the high IQ machines in the world have become telepathic. They now all talk to each other. They're now all interconnected. In 1988, this wasn't true. Now in 1998, it is true. Nobody pretends to understand what is going on. And we love it, because what we see is greater efficiency, money going further, projects being completed sooner. We serve the same strange gods that the evolving intelligence of the net serves. And, there may not be an aha moment where, the New York Times prints a headline, artificial intelligence takes over planet, human race now obsolete. You may be left to figure this out for yourself, or the slow dawning in various sectors. It's the old who will tell the people problem. But I didn't believe this for a long time. I mean, there was for a long time in AI a school of thought that very loudly proclaimed that this was a foolish idea, could never happen, people didn't understand this and this and this, and it was just a golem, a myth of modernity. But all those voices have fallen silent, because the complexity theory, non-equilibrium thermodynamics, information theory, the news in from molecular genetics, cellular automata, autocatalytic hypercycles, study of autopoiesis in large-scale systems. All this leads to the conclusion that weird things do happen when systems complexify beyond a certain level. And emergent behaviors seem extremely organized and intelligent and goal-seeking. And we're now way too far down this road to turn back. So, in a way, all our prescient projections of alien and extraterrestrial intelligence may actually be about this strange companion that we have summoned into the historical experience through this relationship with our machines. I think I said at one of these other meetings that I read George Dyson's book, Darwin Among the Machines, which, if you're interested in all this, is a great book to read. And the point that he makes there is that when human beings think clearly, they think the same way machines think. In other words, if you think clearly, your thinking can be formulated through a mathematical method called symbolic logic. Well, symbolic logic is exactly what is being downloaded into machines in the form of software. The so-called Boolean operators, if, then, and, or, but, we understand what these words mean perfectly. So do machines. These are the distinctions machines make. So, in spite of them being very different from us on many levels, sense is sense. Whether you're a machine or a human being, if you're a machine running bad code, it's garbage in, garbage out. If you're a human being running bad code, garbage in, garbage out. So there is this powerful commonality. Well, then what kind of a destiny can we forge with this thing, which is actually, a child of our own Promethean aspiration? I mean, we all thought it was going to be about paper clothes, hovercraft, and mining colonies on the moon. The idea that it's about, distributed machine intelligence, virtual realities, and the downloading of consciousness into digital circuitry. It's a future we never imagined or supposed, which is a strong clue that it might be the real thing. And virtual reality can deliver. It can actually release you into literary narrative as though it were real. And, I think very quickly the real struggle, in Greg Egan's fiction, he makes clear that, and I agree with him, that the real struggle that we will face in the future is the struggle to remain sensible to each other. That there is going to be a tendency for us, like the head of a dandelion, to just explode in a million directions. Everyone their own private Idaho. Everyone completely able to project their own fears, hopes, dreams, phobias, obsessions with such crystalline, hard-edged perfection and persuasive realism that the real struggle will be to remain coherent. This was the issue that hovered over diaspora. At least 3 forms of human beings had come into existence so diametrically different from each other that they operated basically in complete isolation from each other. I mean, some people became cyborgs, human-machine unions that were essentially immortal and that could cruise the stars and have, cosmic adventures. But what most people did was they became entirely digital. They had no interface to hardware. They simply became streams of electrons living out endlessly adumbrated fantasies in the synthetic realities. And then there was the predictable third group, the earth-centered purists, who tilled the soil and had dirt under their fingernails and actually had sex to procreate rather than dial up things out of vats and stuff like that. The one thing that all this makes me feel good about, it's an expansion of choice. And then, presuming there's some kind of overarching dynamic, whether Darwinian or something else, it will all titrate out in whatever direction it wants to go. Political, technological, and propaganda. So the technologies to do almost anything are coming into our grip. What is not clear and less easy to summon is a political agenda, a plan, because we've never planned. We've only been a global society for 40 or 50 years, and the consequences of all this are just beginning to become apparent.
We have vastly accelerated all kinds of processes. Now we appear to be about to move from the strictly human domain to the human-machine symbiosis domain. And of course, machines process information, make connections, and do their work at a rate thousands of times faster than any human being can work. So we see again a progressive acceleration of the process of creating and maintaining varieties of connectivity. If the universe is complexifying faster and faster, a epoch, a time will come when this rate of complexification is occurring so rapidly that it will become itself the overwhelming phenomena in the world of three-dimensional space and time. And I call this the omega point, or the transcendental object at the end of history. And I believe it is not that far off, that with the emergence of global internet, a human population of several billions, an electronic noosphere, that we are now within the shadow of this transcendental object at the end of time. Our religions sense it. That's what gives them their apocalyptic intuitions. And I think the ordinary man and woman in the street sense a kind of built-in acceleration to time itself. Well, rather than dismissing that or treating it as a psychological perception or something unique to our society, I took it as a basic perception about physics, and have built elaborate, mathematically defined theories around this idea, and then have found, to my astonishment, incredible congruences with other work. I'm thinking of the Mayan calendar and its curious countdown-like quality toward an extremely unique event that the Maya felt would occur in the same time frame that my own equations predicted, even though at the time I was unaware of the Maya. So what we have here is a new model of time based on a very real intuition that I think most people share, which is that time is speeding up, that human beings are part of that process, and that the culmination of that process is now within the ven of historical time. In other words, I believe it will happen in 2012, in December, coincident with the same events that the Maya placed at the end of their calendar. Even if I'm wrong, even if it's 100 years or 500 years later, these are still spans of time that, when compared to the life of the planet, are fractions of a percentage. So whether you believe, as I do, that we can know the precise moment of this transformation of the world of time, or whether you believe it is simply coming soon and fast really doesn't make that much difference. We are all gathered here at the end game of developmental processes on this planet. We are about to become unrecognizable to ourselves as a species. Our technologies, our religions, our science has pushed us toward this for thousands of years without us awakening to what the denouement would be. Now we stand close enough to it that I think all but the most lumpen among us must feel the tug of the transcendental and the transformative.